Peace. Islam. Sheekamauga Alamassee-El. Coming at y'all live. Deep down. Alamassee Arabian country. Coming at y'all live from deep down in Arabia. So-called Taylor County. So-called Georgia. And of course, we already been doing the knowledge. It's old Arabian turf. Old Arabia. The old Barbary states. You know what I mean? It's passing an interesting marker. We continue to do the knowledge, and we're really going to do a drop about the so-called Creek Wars and do the knowledge on what that really was about. And the difference between the so-called red sticks and the white sticks. And of course, the real red sticks are the Moors. They was always the Moors to this day. The red sticks, the Muslim rebels, the Yamasee, the so-called Seminoles, the Gullah Gullahs, the Geechees. These are all the Moors. And they never surrendered. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, these are the same people who just, they call them niggas today. You know what I'm saying? Everybody so-called hates niggas because they're the Moors. They descend from the Muslim rebels that never signed their rights over. And all the lames, all the assimilationists, it's always been like that. But just understand, the ones they call in so-called the thugs and the niggas today, these are the old Barbary. These are old Barbary Muslims. They descend from the old Barbary Muslims. You know what I'm saying? Even though, like, again, the only difference is you may call somebody a Pookie and a Ray Ray or whatever. And it's interesting because my nickname growing up was Pookie. And I grew up in a middle working class family. But my nickname growing up was Pookie. And my name was Pookie for a reason. You know what I'm saying? But the so-called Pookies and the Ray Rays that everybody can't stand. You know what I'm saying? Again, these people are messed up today because they don't have no military. They don't have their nationality intact, and they don't have spiritual guidance to everything they do. But their DNA, their fighting DNA is still there. Now I want you to imagine the so-called the thugs, or the red sticks, or the niggas having their own military and their own government set up, and having a religion and military intact. You know what I'm saying? A real culture intact. That's how it was back in the day. So when they're talking about the Barbary states, the Red Stick Creeks, the so-called Seminoles, the Yamasee, all of these people, you know what I'm saying? The real Moroccans, that never signed their rights over, and they never assimilated, they never got federally recognized, they just kept fighting. These are the so-called the Negroes, you know what I'm saying? And all the allies, and again, not color, not dealing with color, because you had a lot of light-skinned, like Elvis Presley looking Turks that never stopped fighting either. But it's just after the Civil War, you had to pick a side. You know what I'm saying? We were under martial law, and people had to pick sides. So if you were light enough, yeah, you might have went ahead and called yourself right. But a lot of these people, so-called white or whatever, and then you was a Negro. But it's all good because a lot of these people never stop fighting. You know what I'm saying? So again, we're not dealing with color, because there was a lot of light-skinned, Melungian looking individuals looking like Elvis Presley that was still Muslim all the way up until the end. Don't get it messed up. That's the Confederates. So don't get it messed up. But anyway, I'm just passing an interesting marker, and we're gonna talk about we're gonna do a real good drop about the Creek Wars, the so-called Creek Wars. What was really going in the War of 1812 and what was really going on there. You know what I'm saying? They always like to, in the retold history, they always like to act like the so-called United States and Andrew Jackson and all of them was so just big and bad that they just came down here and ran the savages off their land like it was all good. But in reality, what was going on was you had the real ones, even just like to this day, you have real cats, you have real cats that be themselves in so-called Mississippian communities, and you'll always have the lames. You'll always have the lames that'll sit up there and call the police and all kinds, the lame bourgeoisie type of people who will always sit up there and call the police and stuff like that on instead of actually coming together with the people that look like them. They just mad at these same people because they didn't sell their soul. This was going on back in the early 1800s. It's really been going on way longer than that. But it really came to a head in the 1800s. That split off between people who you classified as so-called hood niggas today, gangbangers and all of that. Of course, again, these people are messed up today because they lost their nationality, so they lost the right to have their religion and all of that after being put under martial law after 1865. That's what happened. You know what I'm saying? That's just facts. But best believe back in the day, they had their stuff together. You know what I'm saying? They were considered thugs, but they had their own country. They had their technology. They had everything. They had guns. They made their own guns. We Red Sticks made our own guns. We had our own towns. It was just real. It was real nigga culture, real Naga culture in America, and you couldn't mess with it. You came down here with that nonsense. You was getting towed up. You was getting bagged up, arrested, thrown in jail, put into hard labor, put into slavery. That's what was going on. That's why they called it the slave-holding states, because the red sticks would get you. You know what I'm saying? You come down here looking crazy, and you ain't had no pass. The red sticks, the real red sticks looking like me, we would bag you up. You would put you on a plantation and put you to hard labor. What are you doing here, boy? Y'all got that from us. That's why they don't like us now. You know what I'm saying? So let's do the knowledge to Fort Lawrence, okay? Fort Lawrence, and it's gonna tell us about the Creek Wars and what was really going on, okay? Now, one thing about the Creek Wars, and like I said, we're gonna do a whole drop just with the chronology of that, because it really has a lot to do with what's going on now. What was happening in 1813, in the War of 1812, and with the so-called Creek Wars of the South. But if you look at the way everything is set up now, you're gonna see what was happening. You had basically the lower creek towns versus the upper creek towns. And if you look at the demographics of these places now, it'll show you what was really going on. Now, if you look at the demographics of the lower creek towns to this day are like middle Georgia, middle Alabama, Mississippi, all the way down to Florida. You know what I'm saying? And the upper creek towns are the ones like the so-called North Georgia, North Alabama, all the way up into the mountains. You know what I'm saying? Now, way back at the end of the Revolutionary War, a lot of those upper towns were still occupied by the real ones, the Sheekamauga. They're the ones who were in so-called Chattanooga, Turkey Town, like where it's current day Huntsville, Alabama, or current day like Rome, Georgia, and all these places. That was Sheekamauga turf up there. Now to this day, it's more so like a mixed breed type of demonstration up in these places. You know what I'm saying? But back in the day, so-called Chattanooga, that was an old Chattanooga. That was an old Muslim military town. You know what I'm saying? Let's just keep it a buck. And even Chattanooga, they didn't get the so-called Cherokees. Again, by then it was all the assimilationist Cherokees that came to power in so-called Chattanooga, and they were running everything. But they didn't get them out of there till 1838. Settlement didn't even really happen in so-called Chattanooga till 1838. They didn't get a lot of the new settlers into Chattanooga until 1838. So you got Lookout Mountain, you got all of these military posts all in Chattanooga, and won't act like the settlers built all that stuff. I told y'all in the old drop, Chattanooga is an old military Muslim town. So all of those forts, all up high in the mountains and all that stuff, that's old Muslim. That's old Muslim military stuff, man. You know what I'm saying? And even in the Civil War, the Union had a hard time dealing with the area of Chattanooga. You know what I'm saying? Because the Muslims have been locked that down way back in the day. You just had the assimilationists clicking up with the so-called settlers and all of that. And not saying right or wrong, man. We all, you got the right to go whatever way you want to go. It just happened. It was a schism. It is what it is. This stuff goes back to biblical times, really, to be honest. But the assimilationists, so-called fake Cherokees, the ones who didn't want to be Muslim no more, they wanted to be more European. You know what I'm saying? They took over that area. Now, the assimilationists, the John Rosses and the Major Ridges, and we're going to talk about these people later in other drops. These are people that look kind of like us, but they're either mixed breed or they want to be European. They don't want to be Muslim red stick no more. You know what I'm saying? So these assimilationists, they're the ones who took over the upper towns. That's up in the North Georgia, East Tennessee, current day East Tennessee, Upper Alabama. These are the upper towns. So these people were okay with not enforcing Muslim law no more and letting a lot of settlers and all that move into their towns and all that stuff. But the lower towns remain like hardcore Muslims. That's like going into Georgia, present day Macon, Georgia, present day I guess Birmingham, Montgomery, Alabama, all these places. You know what I'm saying? Like these are the lower towns, the Cusettas, all the way down to Florida, with the Seminoles and all that stuff. These are the lower towns. So these are the so-called real niggas. You know what I'm saying? And they were, back in those days, the real niggas was the Muslims. You know what I'm saying? And we had our stuff. We had guns. We had a whole military down here that they couldn't even mess with. You know what I'm saying? So, and then to this day, if you go deep into these places, it's called what is it called? The Black Belt. So that means the so-called niggas were the ones holding the Muslim custody down. That's why they got treated so bad. The so-called niggas are the Indians. The rebel Muslim Indians. They call them the wild savage Indians. That's who we were. And you wonder why so-called Negroes got treated, Southern Negroes who used to be Muslims, the rebels, got treated so bad after the war. You know what I'm saying? And forced into these so-called Christian re-education, missionary Baptist schools after the war. You wonder why? With the red sticks. That's your blood. You know what I'm saying? So let's check it out. Let's read this. Let's read this, Martin. Let's check it out. So it says Fort Lawrence, okay? And again, we are in so-called Taylor County, so-called Georgia. This is between so-called Macon and Columbus. It's a rural area, but old Creek lands. Don't get it messed up. You know what I'm saying? Old Miccosukee lands. So And again, Barbary turf. More than likely, again, Tunis up in Tennessee, this area is probably Tripoli. And Algiers, that's like Mississippi, Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? That area. There's Algiers in New Orleans now. And you wonder why. And why is New Orleans called the Crescent City? Man, just keep it a buck, man. I mean, get common sense, bro. Anyway, so check it out. So it says Fort Lawrence. Fort Lawrence was located in present-day Taylor County near this site, about 35 miles west of Fort Hawkins. We've already done a drop from Fort Hawkins near Macon, okay? Fort Lawrence stood west of the Flint River, opposite the town of Francisville and the Benjamin Hawkins Creek Indian Agency. And we already talked about that. That was just the United States embassy in our country, in the Barbary state. You know what I'm saying? So, at that time. So, Hawkins Creek Indian Agency, which was located east of the river. The fort was this is Fort Lawrence now. The fort was one of several fortified posts built along a military road which passed through the Creek Indian Territory. It was expanded for military transport in 1811. The road was created from the old federal road postal route linking Washington, D.C. and New Orleans, Louisiana. Okay, now that sounds like a whole lot of cap right there. One thing they like to act like in old American, old Barbary states is that we didn't have roads. Again, the main method of transportation was the rivers. Then it was the railroads. But there were still roads here. And this is the play they run on. They always like to call the old roads, they call Indian trails. Even to this day, they'll rename roads Indian trails and stuff like that. So, because they wanted to sound primitive. We've always had roads here. The roads are the main method of transportation now for these people, but they weren't the main method of transportation back then. It was the rivers and the water. You know what I'm saying? The river highway system was the main method, but we still had roads. So they try to act like they just built the dang on federal road all the way from D.C. to New Orleans. Like they just built that. They couldn't, but they weren't even allowed in Creek Country. They had to have Creek Indian agencies in Creek Country. Man, that road was already there. It was old military road. Because again, the Moors, the Muslims are a military people. That's why they had to brainwash you from being Muslim, because they don't want you to have a military no more. You know what I'm saying? They want you to be a marching, praying clown like they made us, like they forced us to become. And the lames that push that stuff, the elders and the lames that push that stuff, they're the ones who took deals and said, well, we're going to water our people down. We don't want them to have that military. We want that military part of their culture to be removed. Our people have always been militarily sound people. That's why all the old towns were built with fortifications around them, because we don't play like that. That's the American way. You know what I'm saying? We some military people. You know what I mean? That's the old Muslim way. They don't want you to be like that no more. They want you to march and pray and beg like for reparations like the rest of these clowns be running up here doing. But check it out. We're just spitting facts, man. Reactivate your bloods. You know what I'm saying? What up, blood? You know what I'm saying? Check it out. Okay, so now this is interesting right here. It says, in response to the Creek Nation Civil War, okay, let me read that again. In response to the Creek Nation Civil War, 1813, 1814, General Floyd, commander of the Georgia troops, constructed the forts. Fort Lawrence was secured by a stockade wall 13 feet high, 80 yards wide, and 80 yards long. It was defended by 2 blockhouses positioned at opposite corners. Fort Lawrence served as a major supply point and final staging area for troops en route west, where they fought hostile tribes of Creeks called the Red Sticks. You know what I'm saying? The Red Sticks. You know what I'm saying? They're just keeping the book, man. And then it says Marquis de Lafayette, who was a brother. Don't get it messed up. I think PNF already talked about that. But Marquis de Lafayette traveled the old federal road March 29th, 1825, and passed the night at the Creek Indian Agency. In 1843, the first telegraph line in Georgia was erected along a segment of the old federal road, which later became known as the Wire Road. And that's a lot of cap right there. You know what I'm saying? We've been had telephone lines. Man, this stuff is old American technology, man. They like to act like they invented everything. Again, they took over titles to the existing technology. They just couldn't come down here like that. We didn't let these people, again, it was under noble title way back when. That's why even in Europe, they had these dirty peasants living in shacks. You know what I'm saying? While the nobles was living up, while the nobles who had American blood was living up in castles. They had electricity and all that. We kept everything noble. You had to have a pass to be around us like that. You know what I'm saying? So you just couldn't come down here and get not title to the technology so you can industrialize it and sell it off in mass consumption. It wasn't like that. You had to have the blood to get access to this stuff. We've been talking about this. So let's check it out. So let's go back to the Creek Civil War. It just told you. So they like to tell you the War of 1812 and all of that. You know what I'm saying? And then the United States just came in and just took the Indian stuff. But it just said they had a Creek Nation Civil War. Now what that was, and we're going to do a knowledge to that later. But what that was you had these assimilationists, Muslims, you know what I'm saying, who were ready to give up their culture and deal with the new industrial culture and integrate with settlers and all of that up in the upper towns, going towards Tennessee, so-called present-day North Georgia, North Carolina. And even if you go North Carolina, South Carolina and North Alabama, and even to this day, if you ride up in them places, it's way more mixed up there. But if you ride deep into so-called Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, it's still us. We still here. That's because that's where the rebels was at. Because we still here. Wasn't playing all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's why we got treated so bad after the Civil War. Because they was like, well, we're going to put y'all rebels down once and for all. Y'all Muslim rebels, y'all going down. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so what happened was the red sticks of the lower towns, again, deep in Georgia, deep in Alabama, deep in Mississippi and Florida, the niggas, you know what I'm saying? We was like, man, we was giving them an ultimatum. We was like, man, first of all, we keeping our Muslim customs. Y'all been not sending none of them clowns down here. We gonna keep on bagging them up and putting them in slavery and all that stuff. That's the slavery. We was bagging these trespassers up, or when they came down here, if we let them live, but we didn't put them in chains, they had to be under our Muslim law down here. That's why they call it Indian territory. Because it was the Muslims, you know what I'm saying, was running everything. It was the Barbary states. So you had to be under Barbary law down here. You know what I'm saying? So you had these assimilationist people. Up in the upper towns. You know what I'm saying? They was like, well, we want to keep our assimilation. We don't want to kick these people out. We want to treat them right and all that other stuff. Which, again, not right or wrong, but we were just spitting facts of what really happened. They were like, oh, well, you know, we gonna if y'all come up here with that nonsense trying to enforce that Barbary law up here, we calling the United States. We gonna call help Andrew Jackson. And that's exactly what they did. So when Andrew Jackson and all the United States ran in the War of 1812, the Creeks, the assimilationist so-called Cherokees up in the northern area, in the upper towns, and the assimilationist Creeks called the United States to help them because they knew they was finna get towed up by the real ones down south. You know what I'm saying? We was running up there, tearing them up. We was like, man, get these clowns up out of here. When we maintaining our customs, the American braves. You know what I'm saying? So they called the United States Army and they used their militias, the upper towns, used their militias to assist so-called Andrew Jackson in running down here. And again, we know Andrew Jackson was a brother, so don't get it messed up. He was just an assimilationist and more mixed, he probably mixed with European. You know what I'm saying? But he was a brother. Don't get it messed up. If you saw Andrew Jackson today, you would say, oh, that's a Negro. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep it a buck. But the upper Creeks, the upper so-called Creeks, of the Moors up there who are like mixing their families up and all that, they called the United States and they gave them free passes through their land to come on in the red stick turf. And they joined their militias up with the so-called United States Federal Army and all of that. And they helped them. You know what I'm saying? So they just ran down on us. So that's what, when they say the Barbary treaties got imposed, the new treaties after the War of 1812 and 1816 got imposed on the Barbary states, that was because of these assimilationist fools up in, and it is what it is. That was because of these sellouts and these assimilationists up in the upper towns. Again, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, and eastern Tennessee. The assimilationists up there, they were the ones who allowed the federal army to come through and they helped them to invade the real Muslims down to the south. You know what I'm saying? That's all that happened. And we already did the knowledge on them fools. They got played too. They sat up there and helped. And then Andrew Jackson played all of them and made them cede all they land over to. And they just felt stupid. That's why they wanted to form the Confederacy in 1860. Because they were like, man, but damn, we messed up. The Muslims never stopped fighting. We should have never stopped fighting too. We messed up. But again, it was too late by then. You know what I'm saying? So check it out. So again, it said, in response to the Creek Nation Civil War, General John Floyd, commander of the Georgia troops, constructed these forces. That means the United States and the states, they were helping the assimilationist Creeks to invade, to help fend us off from tearing them up. You know what I'm saying? So it was really a civil war between our people, and that's how the United States came into Barbary country. You know what I'm saying? They weren't just so big and bad. You got these people that just don't want to be Muslims. They want to be sellouts. And to this day, you clowns sitting up here hating on Moors and all that stuff. Y'all are the same people that sat up there and assisted Andrew Jackson and them folks running down in the Muslim turf. But then y'all got played, and now y'all get treated bad. You know what I'm saying? And y'all crying to this day, but you don't want to be Moors. But you still crying about being treated bad, marching and praying, begging for reparations and all that stuff. Man, your ancestors sold out. The Moors are the only ones that kept fighting. So y'all look down on the Pookies and Ray Rays and all these people who never gave. To this day, they still thugged out. They still wear bandanas and stuff. They still walking around. They the ones who y'all helped run down on, and they the ones who dang on. You know what I'm saying? They the ones who had an army back in the day that y'all helped run down on. You lames. You know what I'm saying? Walking around with your suit and ties and your jobs and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? And again, there's nothing wrong with having a job. I've had plenty of jobs in my life. But again, having a job and going corporate and all that, you don't have to lose yourself. And a lot of you clowns lose yourself. You know what I'm saying? Just like y'all lost yourself back then and helped take down the so-called red sticks, the real Creeks. Again, even though the red sticks and the real Muslims, we kind of lost the War of 1812. We never stopped bombing. That's what led to the Confederacy, because we never stopped bombing. And the sellouts realized they messed up, so now they want to form the Confederacy, and they want to be Muslims again. And they said the Confederacy, if it won, was going to recognize an Indian state. So they were going to bring the Barbary states back. It just didn't work. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, man, just doing the knowledge, man. We're just putting everything in perspective, shutting down the slave narrative, and understanding it was always a civil war between the Mississippian people. You know what I'm saying? And the lames got ahead for a while. But best believe, the first shall be last and last shall be first. The real ones is coming back. And all you, this is just get down and lay down. You want to talk down on the Moors, you know what I'm saying? There's nothing you can do. You just got to get down and lay down. The Moors is coming. We coming for, because you got did wrong, but we never gave it up. The rest of y'all gave it up. You know what I'm saying? The rest of y'all bowed down and took a beating. The Moors never gave it up. Just like in the War of 1812, we never gave it up. We kept fighting in the Creek Wars, and they kept fighting in the Seminole Wars. They kept bombing. They kept fighting in the Civil War. So, man, get out of here with that nonsense. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, Sheekamauga Alamassee-El, live from Arabia. I'll tap back in with y'all later.